Marco Luciano and Carson Whisenhunt for 2 years of Bo Bichette, a mock trade, and much more coming up next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting Locked On Giants for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already. And please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals. Call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. And coming up on today's show, it is a mailbag edition. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. We're probably going to be getting to more tomorrow because we had a lot of great questions. There's no way I'll be able to get to all of them today. And the first one I want to get to, though, is from Jacob, who says, there was a mock trade, I don't know where the Giants get Bo Bichette and give up Marco Luciano and Carson Whisenhunt. Would it be worth it to shore up the shortstop position for the next 2 seasons? So, let me just confirm that Bo Bichette is, in fact, under team control for 2 seasons, because that would be a big deal. And then also we're going to look at the performance of Bo Bichette as of late. He is signed to 2 years at guaranteed cost, so it's not like arbitration. Even though I think these are his arbitration years, they were kind of bought out. So he's making $12 million this year, essentially 12.1, and then 17.6 million next year. Bo Bichette is, they changed their thing. 26 years old. He just turned 26 in March. He's having a down season at the plate, but it's the only down season of his career to date. He is someone who chases a lot out of the strike zone, but doesn't strike out, a lot of contact. So I would expect that his kind of numbers and performance will rebound significantly. This guy's just a really good player, and he's a young player, 26 years old. And I'm trying to see where he's from, he's from Florida, or at least he was drafted out of Florida. When I'm thinking about a long-term deal and would he be likely to want to sign here to a long-term deal. So he's also been a very good defender in his career, I believe. Actually, I say that and I'm totally wrong. He's not been a good defender. Negative 20 outs above average in his career, which equates to negative 15 runs above average per StatCast, and negative 8 defensive runs saved. Negative 15.2 is the ultimate zone rating number, and that is in runs above average as well. And this is in about 5,000 innings. So that's a lot of innings, and we're talking if you're looking at defensive runs saved, and we're talking about 8 runs in 5,000 innings, it's not that bad. But at the same time, I mean, it's weird because FanGraphs defense metric with positional adjustment puts him as a plus defender. So like being slightly above or below average at shortstop still can make you like an above average defensive contributor, if that makes sense. Like it's more valuable than being like slightly below average at short might be more valuable than being slightly above average at first. It's just because it's a more premium position. But that does concern me a little bit. But at the same time, Marco Luciano's defense has not been great at short, and Carson Whisenhunt is a good pitching prospect, but Bo Bichette, when he's right, I mean, in his career, 293 hitter, 334 on base. So the on base is not super impressive. It's good. The average is very high compared to league average, and then 472 slugging. So hits for average, hits for power, doesn't strike out a lot of balls in play, does chase out of the zone, and solid enough defense at short. Yeah, this guy's a good player, and he could be getting better. He's just 26 years old. I know he's having a down season. So in my opinion, if that was on offer, then I think that I would do that for 2 seasons of Bo Bichette. I think that I would do that. Probably have to think about it a little bit and see, explore what else is out there. If you're giving up Luciano and Whisenhunt, see if maybe there's someone that you felt more like for sure that you could sign to a long-term deal, because I'm not sure that Bichette would want that. Not sure, growing up in Florida or whatever, that he would want to come to San Francisco. That kind of stuff plays into it for me. But just objectively speaking, like to get a potentially like star player in their prime, I know he's having a bit of a down year, but I'd also love for the defense not to be an issue, and it looks like it potentially could be. So those are my thoughts. But on first glance, like, we've seen Luciano, we've seen that he probably isn't a shortstop. Yeah, the Blue Jays, though, like their record is similar to the Giants' record, so it's not like they're having a disastrous season. I'm not convinced at all that they sell, and I think even their GM said it didn't make any sense for them to trade Bichette or Vlad Guerrero Jr. And a lot of the questions in the mailbag are about like Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr. Anyway, the next question comes from Pratik, who says, what do you think about Elliot Ramos's hot streak, specifically how likely it is he maintains his strong plate presence? How will his role change in a season's time when our roster is back to healthy? Trade possibilities? And so there's a lot to get into here and a lot to unpack in your question. I would even say that if we were to look at like recent performance by Elliot Ramos, he has kind of cooled off already a little bit. In that, now the numbers still look really good, but if we look at kind of the most recent like week or something, they're probably not going to look so good. He's kind of struggled a little bit. I think since I want to say that first game in Texas, maybe the second game, he also had a good game. But I guess what is the question exactly? It's what do you think about his hot streak, specifically how likely it is he maintains his strong plate presence? And so it's an uncertainty to me. It's an uncertainty to me because we're talking about 32 games of being good here. And that is not enough time for me to be convinced that he is like a changed guy and that he is just going to be good now. Like, I'm just not convinced of that at all. But I am impressed with his improved plate discipline. His chase rate has gone from like 35% to 30%, and that's one of those things that is like kind of a real thing and a real thing that you can improve in. His zone contact rate is right in line with his career zone contact rate, but the thing is the batting average on balls in play is 411, and so when we talk about sustainability, that's just not a sustainable number. Nobody has a batting average on balls in play that's 400 or better. Like, at best, you're going to be in the mid threes at best, and so we're talking like 60 points of batting average on balls in play are going to come off of his slash line, for lack of a better way to say it. And when that happens, if we look at all the projections, they've all turned and said this is a guy who looks like maybe an above average bat, but still we're looking at batting average projections in the 240s and maybe 250s, some in the 230s, on base projections in the low 300s with some power mixed in. So like a solid player, but not like a great player is what the projections are. So I will answer the rest of this question in just a minute, because there's more to the question, and then we'll get to so many others, including what's going to happen with Brett Wisely. Has he done enough to hold down this shortstop position, given that it was kind of up in the air all along, and he's just done so well with it? So we'll get into all of that momentarily, and before we do, today's episode is brought to you by one of just my favorite apps that there is right now, which is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It is the most fun, exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has you covered every week, from lowering select players' stats projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million members. It is available to play in the great state of California, and I love just picking more or less on Giants players every day. And so they're off today, so I don't have the app pulled up to show you what I'm playing with today. But again, you can play this in California, and you pick more or less two or more player stats, Logan Webb, whoever, hitters, pitchers, whether it's strikeouts, whatever the stat is, and play for like $20, and you can win up to $1,000 or $2,000. You could turn $10 into $1,000, just for example, in a single game. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by our good friends over at Policy Genius. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Their proprietary technology makes it easy to compare personalized quotes and policies from top-rated insurers side by side. Policy Genius's team of licensed experts is here to answer questions, handle paperwork, and help you make decisions with confidence. They work for you, not the insurance companies. From exploring coverage options to making policy adjustments as your life changes, Policy Genius is your advocate at every step, and Policy Genius is committed to your information remaining secure. Your security is their priority. They use industry-leading security practices to help keep your information safe. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB. All right, as promised, we are going to get to the rest of this question about Heliot Ramos and then get into a question about Brett Wisely and many more to get to. So thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day, everydayers. Tomorrow we're going to be getting into more mailbag questions, and then the Giants will be playing the Angels on Friday. And so on Monday we'll be breaking down the series against the Angels. A reminder that Locked On has, a reminder that are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? And do you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Can make the same statement with MLB Network at times, if you know what I'm saying. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a reminder that you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So, yes, the rest of the questions, the question about Heliot Ramos in terms of what do I think next year will look like it's just too hard to say at this point. How will his role change in a season's time? Well, if he continues to play, he's getting a chance to be an everyday player. And if he continues to play well, there's that he would be given a chance to continue to be an everyday player. This is exactly the type of player the Giants need, which is a young player who is not a platoon player who performs well. They're not opposed to that. That is what every team is looking for. And so it just simply depends on, is he able to keep it up and to what extent? And if he keeps playing this way, he's just going to keep playing and will get a role next year. So when we look at the Giants roster next season, Michael Conforto is a free agent at the end of the season, so that clears up a spot on the roster. And we've got guys who are arbitration. Austin Slater is a free agent at the end of the year, actually. Mike Yastrzemski is arbitration eligible, so there's no guarantee of him coming back. Like the Giants would have that choice. And so when we're talking about like guaranteed contracts for outfielders, we're just looking at Jung-Hoo Lee. And as I continue to look through, that seems to be it. I mean, that is it because, yeah, right now I think we're just looking at Jung-Hoo Lee as a guaranteed contract to an outfielder. And obviously we want Jung-Hoo Lee to come back and play center field. So there is a opening there. And that's part of, what's good with the Giants is like you want to have that flexibility and ability to create opportunities. Farhan Zaidi, for all his faults, has been consistent in that message that part of what they're doing on an annual basis with their roster is they want to balance like trying to be competitive, but also creating avenues for young players to get opportunities. And they have, to their credit, especially this year, I think, done a good job of that. And case in point, Elliot Ramos. So it's hard for me to say. I think we just need to let the season play out. There's like 100 more games or so, and he's going to keep playing as long as he keeps performing. And if the performance falls completely apart, like we saw with Luis Matos, then, he might get optioned and then kind of fall out of the picture a little bit. But if you play well, you're going to keep playing, and that's what's happening now. Next question comes from Dan, who says, if Brett Wisely is still hitting like he is and making the routine plays at short, when Nick Ahmed is ready to come back, do you think they stick with Brett Wisely until he falters, or will Ahmed assume his starting role no matter what? Melvin appeared to be in Brett Wisely's camp in post-game comments. So I actually didn't see exactly what comments you're referring to and if he was asked directly about this situation with Nick Ahmed. And I haven't received a super recent medical update on Nick Ahmed from the Giants. The last I saw, like, he had to stop his rehab assignment. Okay, so on the 12th, yesterday, it was reported that he returned to Sacramento on his rehab assignment. And so this is a very important question, I think, because Wisely has done really well. And like I just said, they want to construct their roster in such a way where they give opportunities to young players. And, Wisely is 25. And part of when I say young, it also means like under team control for a long time. Whereas Nick Ahmed is, a veteran player signed to a 1-year deal. It was a minor league deal, but they added him to the major league roster. So it's just at the end of the year, he's a free agent and he wasn't hitting. I mean, he hasn't hit essentially in his career. He's just been a really good defender. But Wisely can play other positions. He could play in the outfield. Right now they've got Ramos playing a lot of center, but that's the beauty of Wisely is he could move around. But do they have a spot? Like right now, the go-to outfield construction is Ramos is playing center and Conforto's playing left, and in right it's kind of a platoon with Yastrzemski and Slater. So there's not really a role for Wisely, a starting role that's not at shortstop because Tyro's playing second. Thairo Estrada, though, for what it's worth, I mean, it's not like he's exactly playing great himself. He's hitting 235, 265 on base, 386 slugging, but does play really, really good defense. And so it's tough. I do not know the answer to that question, but in my opinion, like I wouldn't want them to, I think it would be, they've done this before though, so I wouldn't be shocked by it at all, but to just like send down Brett Wisely and bring Ahmed back. And I've said this a million times and people don't like it, but it's like I'm just kind of explaining the way that I think that they're thinking, which is that it's kind of an inventory protection thing where it's like, well, we don't want to lose Ahmed, so you add Ahmed and you have the option to option Wisely, and therefore you get to keep both. Whereas if you say, we want to stick with Wisely, you've got a DFA Nick Ahmed because he has to be added back to the roster. He cannot be sent to the minor leagues given that he has way more than 5 years of service time, so he can't be optioned without his consent. And I mean, maybe he would consent to being optioned. I don't know. And I don't know if he's been outrighted in the past, which, if a player is DFA'd and they clear waivers at one time in their career, they can be outrighted. I'm not sure if that can even happen though after you have 5 years of service time. So anyway, I don't know. I do like the defense that Ahmed provides, but also Wisely has been solid and is, definitely a more likely a long-term piece than Nick Ahmed. Nick Ahmed is kind of just a stopgap at this point in time, but I do like what Ahmed, like I felt like he was a productive player for them when he was here, but so has Wisely been. And Wisely's done it in 21 games. Ahmed played 36. Ahmed put up .3 Fangraphs wins above replacement in 36 games, whereas Wisely's put up .4 in 21 games. So it's not like, I don't know, the fact that Wisely has hit though and that he's shown so much improvement, I'm just really intrigued, and I wouldn't want to send him away in the midst of such strong performance. So that's kind of where I'm at with him, and we'll see. A lot of times I'm just sorry to say I don't know the answer to the question. I don't know how it's going to play out. So coming up, a hot take about the talent on the Giants roster. Somebody thinks they're the third most talented roster in the National League, and I'm going to respond to that because they say, am I right? So I'll give you my opinion in just a minute, and before we get into it. Today's episode is brought to you by none other than Tax Network USA. Here on Locked On Giants, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. See the link in this episode description below. All right, as promised, more questions and answers. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers tomorrow. We're going to be doing more mailbag questions. There is an off chance that we'll be talking to Sully from Locked On MLB, but I don't think so. And we've got a lot more mailbag questions to get to, and you can add them in there. Check out on Twitter. I said SF Giants questions, please. So add your questions, and I'll add them to the mix here, and be on the lookout for that episode tomorrow. So the next question comes from Wilhelm von Stupid, who says, I have a hot take that the Giants are the third most talented roster in the National League. Am I right? And so, first of all, in order for that to be true, I'm going to have to say, we've got to imagine that we're talking full strength rosters here and not current rosters. And then I'm just going to quickly glance at the National League just to make sure that I'm considering every team. So the Phillies have the best record in baseball. Is it still? No, the Yankees have passed them. But yeah, I think the Phillies have a better roster. It's hard to argue with that. They're 46-21. And they've also been good the last several years. They've got Bryce Harper. They've got a lot of really good pitching. Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, kind of guys all over the place. I do think some of their players are overrated, but I'm giving the Phillies a better roster. The Braves, even without Ronald Acuna Jr., you've still got a lot of guys there, and the Braves are a really good team, I think, regardless. But then you start to look at, the Dodgers are no doubt more talented than the Giants. So right there, I'm already disagreeing. And then I think there's a pretty strong case to make that the Padres have a better roster. And then the Brewers are having, I think you could argue that maybe the Giants have a better roster than the Brewers, even though the Brewers are having a far better start to their season at 40-28. And then you look at teams like the Cubs, the Cardinals, the Reds, the Diamondbacks, the Mets. There's a lot of parity. And so you could definitely make a case that, out of like 7 teams, you could try to argue that the Giants are the top. Somebody else could argue they're at the bottom, and it's like they're all so close. It's like we're kind of splitting hairs between all those teams. But I do think that the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Braves are pretty clearly better rosters, and then I would say that the Padres also have what I would call a better roster, but maybe there's a debate there to be had. They do have a better record right now, and just by a game and a half, projections have the Padres playing better the rest of the season than the Giants. In terms of like rest of season win projections, the Giants are at 515 according to Fangraphs. So there's 1, 2, 3, no teams in the Central, but 2 teams in the East. So that has them as the 5th best roster by the rest of season win projection, which also takes into account your strength of schedule. So it's not entirely objective there about just roster strength. But I buy more like, yeah, that you could argue to me they're a top 5 roster in the National League, the Giants. They haven't played like it, but I mean, actually they have, because, well, not quite, top 6, because they are in that 6th playoff spot, the final spot. They're in it right now, just barely. Like I said, there's a bunch of teams directly behind them. So anyway, I would say I don't agree that they're the 3rd most talented roster in the National League, but you could definitely make a case top 5, but they haven't. But also like guys like Jung-Hoo Lee. Are you counting him because he's not going to play the rest of the year, but he is a part of the roster, like he was, and losing him is a big deal. But the Braves lost Acuna, so I don't know exactly what you mean by this. You probably mean current roster, and I would just say no, not top 3, but they're not one of the bottom half teams. I think they're in the top half of the league, in my opinion, even though they're under 500. Next question comes from Ed, who says, Austin Slater has put together a couple of good offensive performances since returning. How many games / at-bats do you give him until deciding to stick with him or call up Matos? I think Slater is just going to keep playing because, I mean, first of all, like you said, he's playing well right now. There's no chance when he's playing well that they're just going to get rid of him. He cannot be optioned. This is, again, a protection of inventory point that I was making earlier, that Matos can be optioned, Slater cannot. And so if Matos is just absolutely, if he had done what Ramos did, which was play well at the major league level consistently, he wouldn't have been sent down, I don't think. But he really fell off. I mean, if you look at the overall numbers, they're bad. They're like quite bad. And so he had that really good week, but other than that, he's not done so well. So again, it's about injuries for opportunities for young players usually. And so right now the Giants got kind of healthy, and Ramos has established himself as a guy who's like, he's playing well. So you've got Ramos and you've got Yaz and Slater and you've got Conforto, and there's just not really an opening there for Matos, and better for him to be getting everyday playing time than just sitting on the bench. And Slater just has such a track record of hitting lefties and is now starting to do it that it's not about how many games are at bats. If he was struggling mightily, then you give him. Then ask me. I mean, we're talking like another 20, 30, 40 games probably. If he was really struggling, that you might. I mean, because they can't option him. You would be talking about maybe trying to trade him or I guess DFAing him. But he has such a track record. I think everybody, Bob Melvin, Farhan Zaidi, they all believe strongly in track record, as do I. And so there's my answer there. So the last question comes from Guitar Mad, who says, do you believe Robbie Ray can make any realistic impact this year? And my answer is an absolute yes. He's expected to be back around the All-Star break, and I don't see why not. And he's also playing for the opportunity to opt out of his contract and perhaps cash in. But absolutely, I think he can make a big impact. The Giants' starting rotation has kind of taken a lot of hits with guys getting injured and guys like Blake Snell underperforming and being injured. and Keaton Wynn, like being a young player but not performing well, and they're, Dalton Jeffries is pitching and this, that, and the other. So to have a guy who won the Cy Young Award just a couple years ago, I guess in 2021, but even at his worst has been like average to slightly better than average, and is a strikeout guy. I think for sure he could make an impact. And if he's kind of erratic or something, then he could make an impact out of the bullpen, definitely. Yeah, absolutely on Robbie Ray. So that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we will be doing more mailbag questions. So drop some more questions on Twitter, and I'll add them to the mix. A reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.